All right, so this is my upgrades for the first quiz app. The things that I actually added in were the question counter that shows a different number every time you go through the questions, as well as a dark mode for the app and a score notification that uses the snack bar to pop up every time you answer a question to tell you that the question has been answered. So starting off in the beginning of the app, you have at the top the question counter that starts off every time you answer a question. It goes through how many you have gone through. So if we go through each one, you can see it increments itself starting with 0, question 1 through 6. So you've answered one of the 6 questions. And if you go through here and you go through all the different questions, it finishes up and it finishes up at 6 of 6. And if you restart the app, the question increment starts all over and it resets it. Now looking at the dark mode app, if we exit out of the Flutter app, and we go over to the phone and go through the settings, let me go ahead and type in dark. You can see right here we have the dark theme that I've now implemented into it. And if we were able to turn it on, you can see that it changes it into the dark theme. Alright, so here is the actual code that goes along with my upgrade. So starting in the main.dart file, this is where I actually added the dark theme in. I used I used the main account that I already used in the beginning of the app and added a variable called dark color scheme, which I added in to be able to set the dark mode. This is where I use color scheme from seed to be able to choose which color I wanted to. Change the brightness to dark, which would match the dark theme. And for the seed color, I just use constant color black from the ARGB. Going down here, we actually have the theme, which was able to change when the dark mode is actually requested by the system. And I changed it to theme data.dark. And then I use .copywidth to actually use the material to localize the theme of the actual method. And I called it true because it required a Boolean type. For the color scheme, I used the kdark duck color scheme, which is used in the beginning, which I already defined. And for the card theme, we use I used a constant theme to actually localize the theme of the method. Again, I used the color scheme and wrapped it with a secondary container. And then I used it for the edge insets for the symmetric to actually line up the theme, the dark mode to actually match up with the app size. Moving into the questions.screen.dart file, this is where I actually implemented going into the actual question increments. So here I added a text file for questions increment for current question index for the question's length. This is where I actually wrote the text that's actually going to say questions of however many questions that there are set, using the final question is equal to questions current question index that I used in the original app. It already has a set amount of questions and it knows how many questions are in the actual app. So going down, we actually have the expanded file, which required a key and required a widget. So right here, we did an item count to actually be able to go through and scroll through all the different pages in the widget. Here I use questions.length, which was used for the list for the quiz questions, which was already up here. And right here, this is for the actual wording of the question screen. So I just say thickness, change it to 1, and I made the color just black just so it would be able to stand out amongst the purple background. Now the last upgrade that I worked on was a score notification that would pop up using a snack bar that would actually go up every time a question was answered and you'd see the text, this question has been answered. However, I wasn't able to fully implement it within my time frame and I wasn't able to actually get it to pop up on the screen. But the code that I've written is pretty much already done. I just had a few tweaks left that I had to actually implement it in. But looking at the code, I created a class for score notifications, which I extended into a stateless widget. And using this notifications, I needed a key for this title. And after that, I actually built in using an app bar, using a text title, which would have been for the actual screen that pops up. And this was for inside the body was the score notifications page, which is what I'm created, which is this class right below. Now this notifications page is actually what actually pops up the snack bar. So if you look down here, I have it returning a center and on press, which would have been when the question was clicked on by the user, it would use the notification demo, which would actually lead to the snack bar, which is what's actually used by Flutter and Dart to actually make the pop-up notification. I set the time to 3 seconds, and the text would have said, "This question has been answered." I left the elevation at 10, so it would have just been able to float and pop down, and elevated about 10. The behavior I use is just the enum for the snack bar behavior for floating. And for the margin, I set the insets to 5. I set all the insets to 5 throughout the entire message. Here, I use the scaffold messenger to actually show snack bar using score notification demo, which is what I called for the snack bar above. And right down here, we had the child const text, which would have said show progress. This basically would have gone below the question, this question has been answered text, and it would have just said for show score progress, which would have been shown at the top of the questions, which showed how many questions you had already previously answered.